Before we dive into the main topic, please take a moment to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like this deep dive, and leave a comment to support the channel. Your engagement truly helps. Okay, so let's just get right into it. We are living in what has to be the noisiest century in human history.
Oh, without a doubt.
Every ping, every buzz, every single headline is fighting for, well, for our most valuable resource, our attention. And it feels like it's getting scarcer by the day.
It does. And if you've ever felt like your brain is just, built to wander instead of concentrate, you're not wrong. That's its default state.
But the crucial shift, and what we want to talk about today, is seeing that focus isn't some gift you either have or you don't. It's a muscle. It's something you can actually train.
That's precisely right. And our mission in this deep dive is to move you past just wishing for better concentration and give you the practical science and the systems, the actual blueprints to train it.
So we're going from a B1 level of just, recognizing you're distracted to more of a C1 level where you're actively designing a lifestyle that creates that flow state.
Exactly. Not just spotting the problem, but building the architecture for the solution.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. What is focus when we boil it all down?
At its core, focus is just the ability to direct your attention to one single thing, a task, a thought, whatever. And this is the important part. Keep it locked there.
Until it's done.
Until it's done. When that energy is concentrated, you feel calm, you feel productive, you're in control. When it's scattered, that's when you get that tired, anxious, always behind feeling. It's about managing your internal energy.
Right. So let's diagnose the problem. Why is it so incredibly hard to focus today? I mean, compared to even just 20 years ago.
It's a great question, and it's largely a consequence of our digital environment. The number one enemy, I'd say, is a concept called attention residue.
Attention residue. Okay, what's that?
We're all constantly switching, right?
Yeah.
You're on Slack, you jump to an email, you glance at a text, then you try to get back to the report you were writing.
And the residue is the mental cost of all that switching.
Exactly. When you switch tasks, the old task doesn't just, poof, vanish from your mind. A residue of it, some leftover mental energy, just kind of lingers. And the research is really clear on this. Your brain needs a solid 10 to 20 minutes to fully clear that out and commit to the new task.
So if I check an email for just 30 seconds, I've just paid a 15-minute cognitive penalty.
You've paid the penalty, and that explains that mental fog so many of us feel halfway through the day. You feel busy, but you haven't actually accomplished anything deep.
And we all think we can beat this by multitasking.
The multitasking myth, it's so persistent, but what people call multitasking is really just rapid task switching.
You're not doing two things at once.
No, your brain can only handle one cognitively demanding task at a time. Trying to do more forces the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, to constantly reconfigure. And this process, it actually temporarily lowers your measured IQ, and it can slash your productivity by up to 40%.
40%?
Yeah.
Wow. So we're just penalizing ourselves. But I think the real kicker is that our brains are actively rewarding us for getting distracted. Let's talk about the dopamine trap.
Ah, yes. This is the biological challenge. Your brain is wired for survival, and survival often means paying attention to new things. Novelty.
Right, what's that sound of the bushes?
Exactly. So every time your phone lights up, every notification, it releases a little shot of dopamine. That feel-good chemical tells your brain, hey, good job, do more of that. Your neural pathways are literally getting rewarded for interrupting your own deep work.
So our brains are basically addicted to novelty. How do we shift that? Because if we're biologically programmed for distraction, just using raw willpower seems like a losing battle.
It is a losing battle. The shift has to be intentional retraining. We have to teach the brain that the real deeper reward comes not from the quick hit of an interruption, but from the satisfaction of finishing something challenging. It's delayed gratification for your focus. So now that we know the enemies, let's look at the machinery of focus itself. The neurological command center for this whole operation is the prefrontal cortex.
The brain CEO.
The CEO, exactly. It handles planning, decisions, and crucially, it helps you inhibit or ignore all the distracting information coming in.
I've always loved the analogy of attention as a spotlight. It just makes so much sense.
It's the perfect analogy. Imagine all your mental resources are in that one single beam of light. You can shine it intensely on one object, right? And everything else sort of fades into useful darkness.
But every time you switch that spotlight,
your brain pays an attention tax. That's the cost of switching context, of reloading the data, of fighting off that attention residue we talked about. And it's why you can feel so exhausted after a day of just, easy but high switching tasks.
And if that spotlight is limited, We have to be really smart about where we aim it. I think people often mix up the kind of focus they need.
They absolutely do, and that's a critical distinction. There are really two main types. First, you have sustained focus. This is what you might call deep work,
The long haul stuff.
the long haul stuff.
Hmm.
Intense, uninterrupted concentration for, say, 45 to 90 minutes. It's what you need for creativity, mastery, solving hard problems.
And the other type.
That would be short-term focus. That's for the quick tasks, clearing simple emails, organizing a folder, small errands. The mistake everyone makes is trying to mix them.
Trying to do deep work while letting the short-term stuff interrupt you.
Yes, you need protected blocks of time for each. And this all ties into the brain's natural rhythm. You can't just maintain focus forever.
Right, it's not a straight line.
No, it works in cycles. Your brain can maintain that peak attention for maybe 45 to 90 minutes, and that's on a good day before it needs a short break. If you ignore that cycle, you just get burnout and diminishing returns.
Okay, so this is the hopeful part. Focus is a trainable skill. Let's get into the solutions.
This is where a concept called neuroplasticity becomes your best friend. All it means is that your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you practice.
So if you practice being distracted,
You get really, really good at being distracted. Those distraction pathways in your brain become thick, fast superhighways. But if you practice concentration,
you build focus superhighways instead.
you've got it. Every single time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently bring it back to the task, you're doing a rep. You're strengthening that focus muscle. Even failing, getting distracted, and then recovering is a positive step in your training.
So to get started, to overcome that initial inertia, what's a simple tool we can use?
The 5-minute start rule, it is brilliant for procrastination. So much procrastination is just anxiety about how big a task is. So you just tell your brain, look, I'll just do this for 5 minutes.
You're lowering the stakes to almost zero.
Exactly. You give your brain an easy out.
But wait, isn't that just a trick? Doesn't that contradict the need for those deep 90-minute focus blocks we were just talking about?
That's a great question. It's a trick to start, but it's not the strategy to finish. The point is that once you get over that initial hump, momentum often takes over. The task isn't as bad as you imagined, and sometimes 5 minutes just naturally turns into 30 or 45. It's about beating the emotional resistance.
Okay, that makes sense. So
Yep.
once we're moving, how do we structure that momentum so we don't just burn out?
Yeah.
This is where things like the Pomodoro technique come in, right?
Right. Pomodoro is so popular because it works with your brain's natural cycle. The structure, 25 minutes of focused work, then a 5-minute break, it manages your mental energy intelligently. That short break is essential. It lets the prefrontal cortex rest and helps consolidate what you've just learned.
And this all seems to point to one big idea. We cannot rely on brute force willpower to stay focused.
That is the willpower myth, and it's so destructive. Willpower is a finite resource. It gets used up. Successful focus is not about fighting a continuous battle. It's about system design.
Designing an environment that prevents distraction in the first place.
Exactly. You want to eliminate the need for willpower altogether.
So give us some concrete examples. What does that system design look like?
It's all about adding friction. If your phone is the problem, don't just turn it face down on your desk.
Put it in another room.
Put it in another room or in a locked drawer. Use an app that blocks distracting websites during your work block. I know people who will literally unplug their Wi-Fi router for an hour or two. These barriers remove the decision. You've already pre-committed to focus, and as we move into the more advanced sort of C1 level concepts, we have to start managing the environment inside our own heads. Because even in a perfect room, your own mind is often the biggest source of distraction.
For sure, that mental clutter. The to-do list, the worries, the sudden thought that you need to buy milk. How do we handle those?
For that, we use the parking lot technique. You just keep a notebook next to you. When one of those random, distracting thoughts pops up, oh, I need to call the dentist, you don't fight it. You just quickly write it down.
You park it.
You park it, you've externalized it, you've told your brain, don't worry, I've got this logged, you can let it go for now. And your brain can relax and return to the main task.
This sounds fundamentally connected to mindfulness.
It is. Mindfulness is basically a training program for what we call attention resilience. It's not about having an empty mind. It's about practicing the skill of noticing when your mind has drifted and then gently, without judgment, bringing it back.
So just a 2-minute breathing exercise is like a bicep curl for your attention muscle.
It's exactly that. The ability to recover quickly from a distraction is actually far more important than trying to achieve some state of perfect, unbroken focus.
And if we can manage both the internal and external environments, we might just unlock the flow state formula, the zone, where time just seems to disappear.
Flow is where peak performance lives, and it's very scientific. There are three absolute non-negotiable conditions to get there. First, you need a clear goal. You have to know what winning looks like.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, the challenge has to match your skill level. If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get anxious. It has to be right on the edge of your ability.
And the third condition?
Zero distractions. Flow is incredibly fragile. You miss one of those three components, and the whole state just collapses. If you do get knocked out of flow, say you check your phone by accident, don't just try to power through. You need hard reset. Stand up, stretch, do that breathing exercise, then try to re-enter.
We also have to remember that focus isn't just on demand. It follows our own personal energy rhythms.
That is so crucial. Focus follows energy, not the clock. You have to figure out your peak focus hours. Are you a morning person or a night owl? Then you align your hardest, most demanding deep work with those peak times.
And you save the low energy periods for the easy, short-term focus tasks.
Right. Trying to force deep work when your energy is low is just a recipe for frustration. It reinforces the idea that focus is impossible when really you just timed it badly.
And to wrap this all up, on a deeper level, focus really becomes a reflection of something bigger than just a to-do list.
It really does. It becomes a form of self-respect. When you choose to direct your attention, you're respecting your own time, your own mind, and your own goals. It creates this quiet, lasting satisfaction that's just infinitely more valuable than the frantic buzz of constant interruption.
So that brings us to the end of this deep dive. The big takeaways are that focus is a skill we can train, that designing your environment will always beat willpower, and that flow requires that perfect balance of challenge, skill, and zero interruptions.
And I think the final thought is this. In our modern attention economy, the ability to control your focus is becoming the new intelligence. It's a survival skill. The people who can master their attention are the ones who will learn faster, work smarter, and, frankly, live calmer lives.
So your homework is simple. Design one piece of friction today. Put your phone in a drawer for an hour. Or just try that 5-minute start rule on the one task you've been dreading. Just start small. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.